Tuesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. As usual, Tuesday, a day off for the Browns out in Berea, getting ready for the Giants over at Huntington Field. See, I almost messed that up. We're going to start today by heading to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Fred from Cleveland, just calling about the Browns' victory over Jacksonville. They look like a totally different team. Now, if we could just build on that, what they did against Jacksonville, we'll be in good shape, I believe. Love you, brother. Be good, be safe, you and the family, and I'll be in touch.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Mary Kay, when you look at it, what do you think the Browns showed us in that win over Jacksonville, and what were your takeaways from it?
Well, first of all, I thought they really rallied around Deshaun Watson. They knew they needed to do that. They went into the game vowing to do that, knowing that their quarterback was embattled coming off of that horrible loss against the Cowboys. People had written him off for broken and finished. And then, of course, you get to the next day and the new allegations come up. So I feel like they knew that they needed to close ranks around him to go out there and support him. So that was number one. And then they tried some different things. They went with the jumbo offense. They went with Zach Zinter and Nick Harris, eligible many times. They went with Dante Foreman, a bigger running back a lot of the times. And they just did some things to try to keep their quarterback upright and hold Josh Hines Allen and Travon Walker at bay. And for the most part, they did that pretty well. He was only sacked twice, hit 8 times, and he was able to run his game as much as possible.
You mentioned the big personnel with Harris and Zinter. Do you think that's something it worked? Do you think that's here to stay?
I think it will be an option. I think it's something they will be able to pull out of their bag of tricks. I don't think that means that that is the offensive identity that we are going to be seeing now from now on. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but I do think that it's something that they will use and that they can go to when they need to do it, when they want to make sure that Deshaun Watson is safe. Remember, he's coming off of a shoulder surgery. They cannot let him get hit 17 times like he did against the Cowboys and sacked 6 times. They have to keep him upright, and they also have to make sure that he has opportunities to get the ball out very quickly. And I think that was another thing they did in this game.
Foreman, you mentioned him too, played a huge role. Do you think was he more banged up maybe than we knew in week 1, or just a different look and a different game plan in week 2?
I think it was just a different look and a different game plan in week 2. I think that they just wanted to go with more of a jumbo formation and package against this particular defense on the road, in that heat, in that rain, and that's what they did. And for the most part, it worked. But remember also, the offense did end up stalling in the second half. So this is definitely a work in progress. This doesn't mean they've arrived anywhere and that they have figured anything out. It means that in that moment in time, they were able to get away with that kind of a game plan.
So along those lines, how much progress do you think Deshaun Watson made from week 1 to week 2?
I think he played with more confidence, and I think that's important. I think the fact that he knew that all of his teammates had his back heading into this game and were supporting him, I think that that went a long way towards him going out there and feeling confident in himself. Also, he had gotten that first game out of the way. And if you remember, when he came off suspension in 2022, he had a horrible game against Houston in Houston. And I think it was the same way this week. It was his first game back. And sometimes it just doesn't go well. You just have to get the speed of the game again. You've got to get it out there on the grass. You have to remember what it feels like to take a hit. And you have to get the timing down with your skill players. And you've got new schemes that you're dealing with, a completely overhauled offense. So I think everything was new the first week. It didn't go well, and he got it together a lot in the second week.
Amari Cooper and Watson haven't been able to connect. And how concerned do you think the Browns are with Cooper? Do you think he and Watson will hit their stride, so to speak?
You know, I think so. I mean, Amari Cooper is such a good receiver. I can't imagine that he has changed anything from this year to last year. Now, I don't know if the trade rumors have gotten to him. I don't know if there's something else going on with him. We didn't have a chance to talk to him after this past game. We will talk to him on Thursday in the locker room and try to get a handle on what's going on with him, because he doesn't really look like himself. And maybe it's just too sort of off games, and he'll get it together in week 3. And they really need him to, because obviously he's their number 1 receiver, and he has to be on point, and he and Deshaun have to be working well together. So let's chalk this up maybe to just a slow start, a sluggish start between these two, and hopefully for them it'll get better.
So the other thing that comes to mind, what do you think the chances are that Jack Conklin and or Jedrick Wills will be able to play week 3?
It's hard to tell, but those guys have now been in practice for a couple of weeks. This will be the 3rd week that they have actually practiced. And I think at least maybe Jack will be ready to get out there a little bit. Maybe you roll him in there on some 3rd downs. Maybe he takes a little bit of the heat off of DeJuan Jones and a little bit of the heat off James Hudson in this game. Who knows? Maybe he can be used as somewhat of a swing tackle, since we know he's so good on both sides. So we'll see how that goes, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he gets out there this weekend, at least for a limited amount of snaps.
How important can getting them back for a limited amount of snaps even go to kind of settling things down with that offensive line, do you think? I mean, Hudson's trying, but it's rough asking your swing tackle, hey, you got to start at left tackle.
Especially against the pass rushers that they've been going against. To start your first 2 games against Micah Parsons, who is arguably one of the best 2 edge rushers in the NFL, along with Myles Garrett, and then to move into Josh Hines-Allen, who had 17.5 sacks last year, that's a tall order. So, and those are his first 2 starts at left tackle. So I really do think that it will help to have an all-pro like Jack Conklin back out there. Now, of course, again, he's coming off a very major knee surgery, and he's probably not going to be 100% when he does get back out there. But even easing him in, again, on a limited basis will help everyone involved.
Do you think the Browns found a little bit of their offensive identity? And then I guess that would lead to, what's the next step in the progression of this offense?
I'm not going to say that they found their offensive identity in this past game. I think that they used a strategy in that particular game that they felt would play well against that particular defense in that moment in time. And I think they found some things that they know that they can do well with those 2 guys, with Nick Harris and Zach Zinter, and they will roll it out again. But I don't think that now we can say, oh, this is who they are, or this is what they are. I think they're still finding their way. I think they're still trying to figure out who they're going to be in this new scheme and what's going to work. And sometimes if things aren't working the way that you want it to, or you don't have the personnel to run it the way that you want it to, then you run it back a little bit. And that's what I think they did. Now, remember, in this game, they did not have David Njoku, and they also have a struggling Amari Cooper, whether it's just him and Deshaun Watson struggling together or Amari going through something. And for them to be able to go out there and win this game with no David Njoku and with Amari catching only 3 passes for 11 yards, that's pretty remarkable. Deshaun had to find some other ways to get completions, and he did that.
Were you impressed with the way Watson was able to I mean, the first game was rough, without question. And what have you thought about Jerry Jeudy? He's shown the ability to make some tough catches.
He really has. Some of those catches, you don't even think that it's going to be a completion, and you look up and the ball is in his hands. So I think that he really is flourishing with a team that has shown a lot of faith and confidence in him. As I mentioned before, confidence is so important in this game. The mentals of it are so important. And Jerry Jeudy feels wanted here. He feels like they're putting a lot of faith in him, and he's rising to the occasion. And he's been a really good partner in terms of just passing battery with Deshaun Watson. And if he continues to do that, he's going to get more and more targets. Deshaun feels really comfortable throwing the ball. They're not needing a long ramp up period together. They're finding their way together very quickly. And I think that's vitally important.
I'm really curious, and let me know if you agree with this. The way he's running with the ball, you get the ball in his hands in some open space, and once you get Njoku back, there's some guys that can threaten a defense.
Yeah, they can. And this was supposed to be all along a very pick your poison explosive offense with David Njoku, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, and Cedric Tillman. And we haven't even really seen the beginnings of that yet, because again, David has been out, and What I was originally told is that he would probably be out at least a couple of weeks. So I don't know if he's going to be back for the Giants game, not ruled out yet. But if they can get all these guys rolling and get them involved, then I really think they're going to be onto something here. You might not see the fruits of this labor until November, maybe even early December, where it's really humming along, but all the pieces and parts are there for a really good offense.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about some things the Browns are looking to correct. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Mary Kay, one of the things that I don't think anybody would argue, Browns need to correct the penalties. They lead the league, 24 penalties after 2 weeks. How concerning is that, and how do you correct it? A lot of people want to say, oh, it's on the coaching. The coaches aren't out there, jumping off sides or not getting set.
Well, some of it might be points of emphasis that the NFL is trying to make in these early weeks of the season. They're setting the tone for what they're going to call and how they're going to call it. So maybe some of the illegal shifts are something that they're really keying in on. Maybe some of the alignment things we know in terms of just where the linemen are set are some things. Then neutral zone infractions are a thing to look at. But this is definitely something that the Browns are going to have to get some clarification from the league office on how they're calling things. And then they're going to have to make sure that their players know exactly what's coming, what to do, what not to do. So they have to coach it up better. Players have to try harder not to have mental errors. And then I also do think that there is going to be something to be said for, maybe the offensive linemen not playing some pass rushers as fierce as the ones that they have seen in the past couple of weeks, because that's when you start to get the holding calls and some of those other calls. So we'll see how it goes, but it definitely needs to get better.
Is it fair to say, a lot of the motion and things they're trying to incorporate could also be adding into some of those penalties? It sounds like an excuse, but I think it makes sense if you're changing things and doing different things.
Well, absolutely. It's a brand new offense, a brand new scheme. And if you are installing new motions and shifts and things like that, you probably are going to mess it up a little bit in the early going. And they didn't play together in preseason games. So this is really sort of the work out the kinks time for the new offense. Unfortunately, you have to do it while you're also trying to win football games, and that's never easy. So I think it's just a little bit of everything, and it should get better.
All right, this is from Pro Football Focus. Why your NFL team won in Week 2. For the Browns, the pass rush was electric, 17 pressures, 4 sacks. As I look at that, the thing that I want to ask you about, do you think guys around Myles Garrett are stepping up even a little bit more? First 2 weeks of the season, the Browns have had 10 sacks against some pretty good offenses in the Dallas Cowboys and the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, that's what this defensive line is built for. This is exactly what they're made of. They're to go out there and to get sacks and to get those pressures. And when you've got Miles and Z and Dalvin and all of these guys, Quentin Jefferson, Obo, that's what this is all about. And it's what they're doing, and they're doing a good job of it. And of course, everyone knows what Miles is all about. And I think he is getting some good help and support, and I believe it will continue.
Yeah, Alex Wright, I know the safety is a big glare, that pops out. He's played pretty well when he's been on the field. He has flashed a couple of times in those first 2 games.
He really has. And Myles Garrett took Alex Wright under his wing this season, this offseason, and has really helped him out a lot, as he has some of the other young guys. And so I definitely think that that's having an impact. And I think you'll see more big plays from Alex Wright, in part because of that.
Who's impressed you on the defensive side of the ball? And I know Myles Garrett is always pretty impressive, but are there some under the radar kind of guys that you think, man, they're playing pretty well?
Well, Denzel only had 11 snaps in this past game, but I thought he had a really nice game the first week. He looked really good on some things. Could have had a couple of interceptions. So I think he's elevated his game this year, and hopefully the shoulder injury won't set him back too much. And then JOK looks like he's off to a tremendous start, so that's good. And yeah, then I think, as you mentioned, Alex Wright, and I think the safeties have done a nice job. I think Grant Delpit is off to a strong start. So I think that once again, over the next few weeks, you're going to start to see this dominant defense once again.
Yeah, what's the next step in the progression, do you think? I mean, and to be fair, the defense didn't play that poorly against the Cowboys, and they pretty much dominated the Jaguars game. What's the next step?
Takeaways. They've just got to get a bunch of takeaways. If they can do that, then you are serving your offense very, very well. And I think that's probably going to be the key right now, is for them to take that ball away and not only do that, but to score some points too. It's time to beef up the points no matter how they can possibly get them. And that is going to be one great way to do it.
So I found this really interesting. I saw this the other day. Under Kevin Stefanski, the Browns have a 15-2 record when they do not commit a turnover. That's a sign of a pretty good offensive head football coach. But it goes to show you, every week you and I, when we talk, it seems like we're saying, they got to take care of the football. That puts some numbers to that. And by the way, they didn't turn the ball over on offense this week when they beat the Jaguars.
And that is why Kevin is always preaching that you have to protect the football and you also have to take it away. It's definitely a point of emphasis on defense. They practice it all the time. We see them practicing it, and it's something that they really, really work hard at. They know they need to do it. And I think that, again, I think that's something that Jim Schwartz is really going to drive home with his guys. And if they do that, it will really give that offense time to gel and come together, because it's going to need that.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer at cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside to take a quick time out. On the side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones. Diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. I was watching the All-22, and now I will admit I'm far from an expert, but I saw a few things that made me encouraged. Stefanski really is getting players open. It's up to Watson to hit them, but Stefanski has players running open. But what I was really happy about was Jerome Ford. He refrained from dancing around behind the line of scrimmage, and, he hit the hole with some purpose. In my opinion, I think Ford thrives in the running back 2 role. I think if he could get between, let's say, 10 to 12 touches per game, which obviously includes carries and catches, I think that would be ideal for him. What do you think? Thanks. Let's go Browns. Root, root.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Mary Kay, what do you think? Jerome Ford did hit the hole quicker. I think that was noticeable.
I think that when you make a commitment to the run team-wide, then you're going to have a much better running performance in that game. And I think they're finding just how they want to work this out between Jerome Ford, Dante Foreman, and find their identity in the running game. Offensive linemen love to run the ball. I'm sure they're going to be happy if they run the ball more. Of course, you have to be able to keep the score pretty close so that you can keep the running game viable, and that didn't happen against the Cowboys. In this game, they were able to keep running the football, and I think that made a difference. And I think Jerome Ford has another gear that he can hit that we haven't really seen yet, and I think it will come out this year. He's got the new coach in Deuce Staley. They've got some new running schemes and some new philosophies going on there, and I think, again, this whole offense is a work in progress, and they're not yet what they're going to be.
When you look at it, do you have a sense of how you think the carries get divvied up with that backfield?
No, because I think, once again, this is an offense that will scheme it up for the opponent. And if it seems like Dante Foreman is the better lead back one week, then they'll go with that. If they think it's Jerome Ford, then they will go with Jerome Ford. So I don't think that they have any one set way of doing things, and that they will change it up week to week, go into their toolbox and pull out what they think it's going to work. If that's a jumbo offense, they'll do that. When David Njoku gets back, they'll do things differently, just because you can kind of scheme around him a little bit. So I think that they'll do whatever they need to do in any given week to win the football game.
David Bell, we found out the hip injury will cause season-ending surgery. He played really well against the Jags. I didn't have a lot of snaps, but it seemed like every time he's on the field, he's catching the football.
Yes, he caught all 3 passes that came his way, and that's what you want. That's why they call him Mr. Reliable. I think he has elevated his game. He had a few drops as a rookie, and he's really gotten that cleaned up. So it's unfortunate that he's going to miss the season, because Deshaun needs all the weapons that he can get right now, especially while you're waiting for things to kind of click between him and Amari. And David is also someone that I think will be able to run those choice routes. So hopefully he gets the hip injury figured out and that he can come back strong next season, because there's something to David, and I think he was ready to show it this year.
Who does his absence potentially give an opportunity to, do you think?
Well, just because, there are different styles of receivers, it's hard to say who would get some of the reps that he might have gotten. But I certainly think there's more work to be had for Cedric Tillman. He's someone that you can mine some things there and try to get him some targets. So I would think that over the next few weeks, they'll try to get him more involved.
AFC North through 2 weeks has been crazy. The Steelers haven't lost a game, and they've scored 1 touchdown in 2 weeks. The Bengals and the Ravens, who everybody thought were going to run away with they were 2 of the favorites, haven't won a game, and the Browns sit at 1-1. How crazy has the division been when you look at it?
Well, it has been crazy, but we must remember that the Ravens and the Bengals have both faced the Chiefs. And from the standpoint of common opponent tiebreakers as you get towards the end of the season, this really gives the Browns an opportunity to win that one if they can go out themselves and beat the Chiefs when they come to town in December. So that's something to keep an eye on there. They could gain a little bit of ground there. But this sets up for a very interesting and dramatic AFC North hard knocks when that happens in the final 6 weeks of the season, and they're all playing each other, and there's a lot of drama going on. So we'll see. There are a lot of interesting things going on. You've got Justin Fields starting in Pittsburgh. Their defense is playing well. You've got the Ravens having some of their issues. You've got Jamar Chase stories coming out of Cincinnati, and those 2 teams haven't really hit their stride yet. But when they get going, we all know what they're all about. So this is going to be a lot of drama throughout the season.
Yeah, we've talked a number of times. You can never really do the schedule game. And when you look at it, the Bengals have lost to the Patriots and at home, and the Ravens have lost to the Raiders at home. The good news for the Browns is those are both AFC opponents. So that would figure into tie-breaking is the Browns' losses to the Cowboys.
Yes, absolutely. So from a tiebreaker standpoint, they're in good shape right now. And then, of course, they have to go out and play the Raiders on the road, and they're proving to be pretty tough. I mean, if you can beat the Ravens, then you must be doing something right. And we do remember that Gardner Minshew gave the Browns a tough game in Indy last year, almost won that football game against a really, really good defense, what proved to be the #1 defense in the NFL. So we'll have to see how this goes. But in the early going, it looks like it's going to come right down to the finish, which I always thought it would. This is going to be a fight to the finish. I still think it's the best division in football, and I think it will live up to the hype.
So the Giants at home at Huntington Bank Field this Sunday. Then they go on the road for some. It's the Raiders and the Commanders. How important are these next 3 games? Those are, and again, you never say those are the easy games, but the schedule does start to include elite quarterbacks after those 3 games.
Yes, I mean it's funny because you really can't play the schedule game very effectively because you just don't know who the quarterbacks are going to be. You don't know who's going to be standing. Who knows if Tua will be playing by the time the Browns face the Dolphins in December? Who knows what will be happening with any team? Look what's going on right now with the San Francisco 49ers with Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel. Things can change on a dime. So that's why Kevin always preaches 1 game at a time. And that's basically what they're doing. But they do have an opportunity to make a little hay right now with what is sort of a soft spot in the schedule. Now, they are in the midst of 4 out of 5 games on the road right now, but some of the opponents are not as tough as the ones that they will face throughout the rest of the season or the one that they faced in the opener in the Cowboys. So it is a chance to gain a little ground in the standings. They should be able to do it. I'm saying they've got to be able to beat the Giants. That's going to happen on Sunday. They're going to beat the Commanders, and I do think that the Raiders in Vegas will give them a game, but they should still be able to win it.
So Giants are struggling, 0-2. What's the blueprint for the Browns to get a win at home?
Well, I think the key on Sunday is that their defense is going to have to be the dominant version of itself. Now, again, Denzel Ward is coming off of a shoulder injury or trying to play through a shoulder injury right now. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Myles Garrett, a little bit set back with a foot injury, but I still think that they are going to overmatch Daniel Jones and the Giants. I do think that that the Browns are going to go out there and be the dominant defense that they know that they are. They do not like what happened in that first game against the Cowboys, the way that they opened up, giving up 2 touchdowns in the first half like that, including one on a blown coverage. So I think they're going to go out and be the defense that helped the Browns go 8-1 at home last year. That's the defense that you're going to see on Sunday against the Giants. I think fans know it, the defense knows it, and I think everybody can get ready for that.
Before I let you go, what do you think the Browns offense wants to see? What does Kevin Stefanski want to see from this offense as the next? I mean, you can't go from where you're at to what you want to be in a week. What's the next step in the evolution of this offense?
I would say some more progress in the passing game. There's got to be something good going on between Deshaun and Amari. That has to happen. You cannot have those 2 guys combining for 5 of 17 targets for 27 yards and no touchdowns in their first 2 weeks together. By now, Amari should have, probably 10 catches, 175 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's what you expect from your wide receiver 1. So that's got to get better. It'll help when they get David Njoku back. That will help out a lot. And just keep building what you have there with Jerry Jeudy, and of course, keep trying to run the football.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, as always. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Mary Kay.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot. Make sure you check her out. Always great Browns coverage. Pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. This is kind of interesting. This is yards per route run rate through 2 weeks. And when you look at it, Amari Cooper, 0.30 yards per route run. In the same neighborhood was Christian Watson, rookies, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Polk, and Iovasis from the Bengals. Just not where you want to be. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham. He's the senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, when you look at that, how concerning is it? Are the Browns concerned with the slow start for Amari Cooper, do you think?
Well, that's been a topic with Kevin Stefanski. His new favorite word is sample size. And I tend to agree with him that 2 games, and as bad as the first game was offensively with the Cowboys, you kind of really can't read anything into that. So, yeah, I'm most concerned with the drops. I mean, he dropped a touchdown pass, in my opinion, against the Cowboys that was right there. And he certainly dropped a third down play that would have put the ball in the red zone if he didn't get into the end zone against the Jaguars. So those are uncustomary for him. He usually goes up contested and makes those plays. These were almost wide open. So I don't know if it was a little lack of concentration or what, but I think it could be concerning if this was, deeper into the season, but I'm pretty confident in Cooper. I mean, he's done something that no Browns receiver's done, coming off back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Was really spectacular down the stretch last year, but clearly Deshaun Watson and Cooper haven't been able to get on the same page. I'm not concerned, but he's just proven, I think he's been to the Pro Bowl 5-6 times. I don't think he's lost at all in 6-7 months. So we'll see, but I expect them to make a concerted effort to get him the ball, get him going, get him in a rhythm, maybe with a quick pass to start the game. I mean, I see him in practice. Him and Watson look like they have a great connection. Obviously, it's not a game, but I'm not too concerned. I'd be more concerned, like I said, if it was deeper in the season and it's allowing Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore to, make some plays. So he's going to have to come through. I mean, I would consider in the passing game Cooper 1A and Njoku 1B, and Njoku's obviously out with that high ankle sprain. So they really need Cooper to catch his footing, here in this upcoming stretch of 2 or 3 games for sure.
So this is also kind of interesting. So through 2 weeks, no quarterback has had more passes dropped than Deshaun Watson, 8, leading the league at top of that. So let me ask you this. What do you think of Deshaun Watson in week 2? And if the Browns get that version of Deshaun Watson the rest of the year, what does their season look like? What does their record look like?
Well, I've talked with you on this show many times in the off season that in the regular season, Deshaun Watson just doesn't have to be the old elite leading the NFL in passing yardage for the Browns to make the playoffs. He just needs to be average to above average. I would say the Jaguars game was average to above average, especially the first half was above average. Second half was, I would say average because he didn't turn the ball over. He had one major blunder in that game, and obviously, it could have cost him the game. It was like the last play on offense when he threw the pass, went incomplete, and gave the Jaguars plenty of time to go down the field. If he had just taken the sack even, they would have had 40 seconds less, and that would have been almost impossible. But other than that, he played well enough for them to win, and that's the most important characteristic is winning the game. So their record, I picked them to be 10-7 and make the playoffs, and I expected him to play above average this year. I mean, if there's any consolation, last year in the Bengals game to open the season, the defense really was the story. Joe Burrow wasn't ready. That, you could tell his leg was bothering him, and the defense really smothered the Bengals and set up the offense. Second game was a debacle in Pittsburgh. Watson threw that pick six on the first play, even though it might not have been his fault because it went off Harrison Bryant. But that was a bad game. He fumbled late, cost him the game. But then he played his best game, up until that point in the third game against the Titans at home. If you remember, he ended up throwing for 289 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a 40-yard touchdown called back because they blew a whistle on, ironically, Amari Cooper stepping out of bounds. Replay showed he definitely didn't step out of bounds. So he would have had over 300 yards, 329 yards, and 3 touchdowns. We all know that he hurt his shoulder in that game and stayed in, didn't really tell anybody. And that kind of set off a string of crazy play the rest of the year, which ultimately put him on injury reserve and had shoulder surgery. So he has notoriously been a slow starter. So if he could improve even from the Jaguars game and put a full game together this week against a very beatable Giants team, I think, that could be enough to get him on track to continue to play that way.
So what were your biggest takeaways from week 2 against the Jaguars? Biggest area of growth, and what's the biggest area of concern as you look at it and heading into that Giants game?
Well, as far as players, I think Watson, obviously, he did, he set the tone. And I liked Deontay Foreman, putting him in there. I think he gave him a big boost in the running game. And, on defense, JOK, of course, continues to play well. But I was very impressed with Jordan Hicks. He was all over the field. I think he's been a major upgrade, at that middle Mike linebacker. He's very aggressive. I like they had 5 tackles for loss, and you throw Grant Delpit in there. Those are like sacks. JOK had 2 of them, Delpit had 2 of them, and Hicks had 1 of them. I'm talking about tackles for loss, and those are big. So the defense all the way around, I thought they set the tone, played extremely well, only gave up 1 touchdown. For everybody criticizing Deshaun Watson, in his $46 million contract, the guy on the other side's getting $55 million a year, and I think Watson outplayed him. And the defense held Lawrence to 16 passing yards to halftime and well into the third quarter until he hit that, 66-yarder. And then when they were playing from behind, they got some more yardage. But I think the defense overall, on the road, we criticized them last year, giving up 32 a game. This was to a quality opponent on the road, held them to 13 points, 2 field goals and a touchdown. So biggest concern was the self-inflicted wounds. I talked to Kevin Stefanski, asked him about that. I said, it has to be a silver lining to come out of there with a win, as ugly as it was, and as bad as you guys played, and most of those penalties were caused by yourself. Again, illegal formations, illegal shifts, that one on Hopkins by wandering across the 50-yard line when they recovered a fumble. All those penalties, 13 penalties for 100 yards. That's concerning. Defense, biggest concern is they're not getting any takeaways. That's 2 games in a row. That was a problem last year. But everything else, my point with the self-inflicted wounds, if they just clean up the penalties and the mistakes like that, they would have won that game by halftime. They could have put that game away early, and they wouldn't have had to been scrambling for their life at the end.
Yeah, that's fair. We'll get into that a little bit later as well. Denzel Ward, he kind of on a snap count. What do you think of that? And how have you thought Cam Mitchell has played? It looks to me like he's playing pretty well.
Yeah, I think, again, that's a silver lining. If you can play, they had one of their 5th corner, Khalif Halasi, inactive. So, you had basically 4 corners, and Ward on a pitch count only playing 11 plays. you relied with three corners, Newsome, Emerson, and Mitchell, because Mike Ford, who was activated last year, he played on defense. He only played 3 or 4 plays on defense, so they played almost the whole game with Mitchell. And I think that bodes well that you have a 5th-round pick that, with Trevor Lawrence out there, he just did not, he wasn't able to pick on him and substantially make a big difference. And I think if you get through the game with Ward, he's going to be healthier next week. And obviously, they put him out there on 3rd down and bigger plays. Tells me if he's healthy enough to play on 3rd down, he's healthy enough, to play. But I think that bodes well that you're developing Cam Mitchell that could really help you in the back end. And Jim Schwartz had enough confidence in him, to not have Halasi, active and really lay that on the plate of Mitchell, knowing that Ward wasn't going to play. We know that Denzel Ward, is slight and has times when he gets dinged up. He's been banged with the shoulder. His job is really to cover, not to tackle, not to do all those other things, be a big hitter. And I just think that if he can be out there and cover, that's a bonus. But hopefully he'll be, able to ramp up the pitch count even more this week. He practiced all week, so I don't think it's a major injury. But with Denzel Ward, you want him on the field for sure.
Fred Greetham, Senior Analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, Senior Analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. This is from Dog Pound Daily, top 5 players from Week 2 for the Browns. Number 5, they go with Dustin Hopkins, the kicker, some long field goals made. Number 4, Corey Bojorquez had probably the play of the game where he had the punt that went out at the 1-yard line and led to the safety on the next play. Number 3, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker who was making plays, TFLs that we talked about. Number 2, Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver, made some really nice catches. Number 1, Myles Garrett, defensive end. Fred, Myles Garrett always seems to bring it and play well, so that's not a surprise. I want to talk a little bit about Jerry Jeudy. He's made some really nice catches and has really stepped up when, Amari Cooper has struggled a little bit in these first 2 games.
Yeah, they were counting on him. They traded for him. He was their marquee acquisition. They signed him to the big extension relatively now. It looks like a good deal, if he can do what, his potential says. They really made the extension and the trade with his potential in mind. He hasn't really lived up to it up till now. They felt like a new scenery, being with the Browns and being with Amari Cooper, his idol from Alabama, where he followed in the footsteps. So, yes, so far so good. He kind of disappeared a little bit, off to a great start. But I think that's the whole game plan, is that if you can spread the ball around. I think that was one of the things I was impressed with Deshaun Watson. He threw the ball to 9 different receivers, and he just took what was given to him. But Jeudy, if he continues to step up and play, that's going to create more opportunities, for all the other players. And it takes a little pressure off of Amari Cooper that maybe he's not going to get all the double teams. Maybe they'll have to start double teaming Jeudy and, get some different matchups there. So I was impressed with his play, and I just want to see it consistently week in, week out.
Yeah, Jeremiah Cormo is another one, and Grant Delpit, I think you can put in there. Both of them were creating havoc in the backfield, and if they play like they did, those two guys with relative to the tackles for loss and getting in the backfield with the run game, this defense is going to be awfully hard to beat. The only thing you're going to be able to do, you're going to get an occasional big play like the Jaguars did against them.
Yeah, I mean, as far as that has been the MO last year, that's what you wanted to see. And, like I emphasized earlier, we criticized a lot because they were 8-1 at home last year and the defense was just lights out, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong on the road. They gave up over 32 a game. And, obviously it's only one game, but the Jaguars are supposed to be a playoff team. They have a big time, at least being paid quarterback. I think he's first or second overall in pay. And they shut him down. They shut the offense down and held him to one touchdown. So you can't explain it. You saw the Cowboys just light the Browns up, and then the Cowboys get lit up last week by the Saints. So that's the way the NFL is, and that's why, I wasn't ready to jump off the cliff, like most Browns fans after the first week. It's kind of in reverse last year. They had their debacle in the second week over in Pittsburgh last year. So now you just want to see them right the ship and start stringing some wins together and get yourself ahead of the, with your record, and put yourself in position to really make a run in the second half of the season.
So this is from ESPN, power rankings after week 2. They have the Browns at 22, which is kind of interesting. They have them dropping a spot. Most important backup role player, Jameis Winston. Okay. They're at 1-1. Browns are a game ahead of the Ravens and the Bengals. So I guess people, my guess is people aren't sold on what they saw from Deshaun Watson, and that's why you're 22nd. Okay.
Yeah, well, all year, all offseason, that's kind of, where Watson was ranked there lower, and that's fine. We've said that he's a big key to the season, but yeah, listen, you win some games, you're going to move up in the deal. We feel like they have winnable games here in the near future, and that should allow you to kind of get on the roll. And I think what a lot of people, I have a column on the OBR.com right now that I put out this afternoon. There should be a lot of optimism, if the Browns take care of business, because as ugly as that game was in Jacksonville, it was a win. And you'd much rather, if you're going to be 1-1, you'd much rather have won the AFC game against a team that could potentially be a tiebreaker down the road for the playoffs than the NFC game with the Cowboys. And now you have games coming up that you could win, and you have 4 starters on offense potentially returning in the near future, in Jack Conklin, Jed Wills, David Njoku, and Nick Chubb.
Yeah, without question, I would agree with you. This is from Bleacher Report, takeaways from each NFL team in week 2. For the Browns, they say they can win with average quarterback play, but mental mistakes can't continue. If Cleveland can stop hurting itself with avoidable mistakes, winning consistently will be difficult. Cleveland was flagged a whopping 13 times for 100 yards against Jacksonville. Penalties nearly cost the team a chance to seal the game late. Along those lines, Browns lead all of the NFL in penalties. They have 24 of them in 2 games. Ironically, Pittsburgh and the Ravens are second and third. But my question is, how do you stop the penalties? I mean, who do you point to? A lot of people want to say it's coaching, but at some point, you can't jump offside, and you have to stop when you're in motion.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be aggressive on defense, but I don't know how, as great as Myles Garrett is, I don't know how he can sit there and continually jump. Just watch the ball and don't move until the ball. But on offense, those ones before the snap, when you're lined up off the line, or you jump because you're intimidated that the pass rusher is going to get that. Those I do think are on coaching, and sure it's on the player, but I think there needs to be a little bit of a accountability. You do that, you're out. Even if it's embarrassing, yank them off the field, and maybe they'll think about it before they do it again, because you just can't do that. I mean, the other day, I think Foreman had a 12-yard run, and Elijah Moore had an illegal shift or moved. He wasn't even involved in the play, and that, put him back to like 1st and 15. They're behind the chains. And even Foreman, he had that 15-yard run into the red zone that basically could have iced the game. He was the culprit with the face mask himself. But, those holding penalties, just some of them are kind of, called, they could be called any play, but it's those unavoidable or those avoidable penalties of just jumping or being in the wrong place, lining up, that's what kills you. And so I just think, I think it's a combination, but I think the coaches just need to drill at home, make them kind of the old high school. You got to run and practice if you jump or any of those things. They practice on defense staying still, when the other team's doing their fake. And so they've shown they can do it on both sides. So they just have to do it, because you take away 100 yards and penalties, I think you're you're in great shape. In both those games, 11 penalties against the Cowboys, 13 last week. That can't continue. That's why I said they have to feel good that despite all those self-inflicted wounds, they still won the game. I mean, and so that's what I think they need to put all their emphasis and, to cut that down. That's just shouldn't be happening with NFL players. Professional players have to be disciplined enough to not jump and know where to be.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll turn our attention a little more in depth to the Giants game coming up. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, you look at the offensive line. James Hudson struggled again. Do you think Jack Conklin or Jedrick Wills can play this week? Do you think you get some snaps out of those two?
It's really a head scratcher, Dave. As far as they kept 2 roster spots for Jack Conklin and Jed Wills. And those are, they hate to cut players. And as part of the 53, if you're going to miss 4 games, you would put them on injury reserve and then activate them. So we're now in game 3. I would have to believe that one or both is going to play this week. And if neither play this week, then I would have to think both would play in the 4th game, because why in the world didn't you put them on injury reserve, if you were doing this? Conklin, I think, is ready to play. I don't know, maybe they wanted to wait till home, but I have to think that he's in line, if he doesn't start, to at least get some reps and get his, feet under him. Now the question is, do you put, if Wills is ready, do you put him at left tackle and Conklin at right, or Conklin at left, and if Wills isn't going to play? So it really is kind of strange, but I would think, I mean, I don't know how many days, Stefanski can say he's really, really close. I mean, I watch him practice. Last week, Conklin practiced all week in the part we're allowed to watch. So I don't know beyond that, but he was listed as limited. He was 50-50 questionable 2 weeks ago. And then again, he was limited or questionable 50-50 for last week's game. So he keeps saying he's better. So you got to be better than 50-50 by now. So my guess is Conklin will play this week against the Giants, and Wills will play next week against the Raiders.
What about Njoku? That's a guy who hasn't been ruled out yet, but I think we week to week usually means more than 1 week.
Yeah. I was told that, that he was in a lot of pain to play last week for sure. So I would think he'd be held out, and I think it's prudent with the Giants not taking them lightly, but they showed they can win last week with Jordan Akins, and I liked using Nick Harris and blocking and Zach Zinter. So we'll see if he practices, but I would think, why not give him at least another week? I mean, if it's a high ankle sprain, many times those are several weeks, not just 2. But again, they didn't put him on injury reserve when they put all those defensive players last week on injury reserve. So that has to figure in that they didn't think it was a 4-week injury. So if he holds out this week, then maybe he can return against the Raiders next week. They might need him a little bit more.
When you look at the Browns offense, do you think they found a little bit of an identity, or is it still kind of a work in progress and they're still searching?
Yeah, I don't know what their identity is. I mean, they went back to running the ball. I liked the using Nick Harris, Zach Zinter, and kind of overloading, and it paid off. 125 yards. Deontay Foreman, I think, gave him a banger, and he had some big carries. He had 27 yards taken back on penalties, and him and Ford kind of a 1-2 punch. I saw Ford had like the fastest time on that 36-yard run on any carry this year. I think it's only 2 weeks, but I think that was a nice burst. So I think it bodes well, setting up for the return of Nick Chubb, to know you have some, guys behind it, and that you can run the ball. They run for 125 yards. It wasn't in garbage time. It was in time they needed to. And so, yeah, I think that, Deshaun Watson, right now it's almost like he's been a game manager, and that's not what you brought him here for. But whatever it takes, if you can get him going, like I said, if he just plays and doesn't hurt you or lose the game for you, he's going to have to make throws in the game that help you win. And he did that the other day. That play to Jerry Jeudy on the sideline where he scrambled, and I mean, I thought it was a throwaway, and he threaded the needle for the big pickup on Jeudy. So, yeah, I mean, all the way around, I think it is a work in progress. I haven't really seen, what I was expecting. I was expecting more run pass options, quick hitters and things like that. But I think it would start to open up a little more if you can get Amari Cooper going.
Before I let you go, what are the keys for the Browns to get a win against the Giants, which I don't think many people would argue is a less talented team, but what are the keys for the Browns to get to 2-1?
Yeah, I think the Giants, are near the bottom. It's only 2 games, but 31st and averaging 12 points a game. I think the defense should be able to have a good game again at home, with an offense that struggled. And so that allows your offense to find its footing again. They have a big run stopper in Dexter Lawrence in the middle, but I think this will be a good test. See if you can run the ball. They're 28th. They're giving up about 163 yards in the first 2 games. So I think if you run the ball and even use the big lineup again and Foreman and Ford and pound the ball, I think that will open up. So I think the key is just play a clean game. They had no turnovers last week on offense. If you can keep that to a minimum, that's what is the difference. That's where you lose games and when you turn the ball over. And I just think this is a chance for Deshaun Watson and the offense to take another step. You don't have maybe as strong of a defense. You're going up, not known for the pass rush that the Jaguars were. This is a chance to kind of take the next step on offense. I think the defense will take care of their side of the ball. It's on the offense to be able to put enough points on the board.
Fred Greetham, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
All right, Dave, thanks for having me.
Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. He's the senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, always really good Browns coverage. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.